either one of these any good?
Wow, this is a good movie.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, well, the director from yesterday doesn't think so.
It stinks.
You sorry? You waste our film.
It's so bad.
Not as many films to talk about this week as we've had the last few, but still plenty of quantity, but still plenty of quality, if not as much quantity, on the screening room this week. And welcome to it. She is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we are from maddwolf.com. That's MADDWOLF. And we're going to start at 11:30 p.m. on October 11th, 1975. A ferocious troupe of young comedians and writers changed television forever. Find out what happened behind the scenes in the 90 minutes leading up to the first broadcast of Saturday Night Live. It's Saturday night.
So tell me how you fit into this ensemble.
Oh, is this an ensemble?
NBC makes more money playing reruns of The Tonight Show.
NBC is lucky to have something as relevant as this show.
One they don't even want.
That's logical, Dick. That's why they're paying us all to be here.
I mean, we're 90 minutes of live television by a group of 20-year-olds who've never made anything. Do you ever stop and wonder why they said yes? A counterculture show starring total unknowns with zero narrative and even less structure. They want you to fail.
We just have to make it to air.
Am I still in the show?
Jesus Christ.
Sorry, tripped over my penis.
It is hard to believe that this year, the 50th season of Saturday Night Live. It's incredible.
50 years old. It can kick.
They got to have her back on just to do that. It is, depending on your age, it is more of a cultural landmark for you. I mean, when this debuted, what did they say it was? October. So I had just turned 11 years old. And I remember it almost the entire time. I'm not sure I watched the first episode. 11, that's a little young to be staying up that late on a Saturday night. My bedtime was still 9 o'clock, when I was a kid. But, boy, I remember it pretty early on, especially when Steve Martin came on. But the point is, no matter how old you are, you probably have some frame of reference to Saturday Night Live, your favorite cast or whatever, or the cast members that so many have now gone on to just superstardom. Mm-hmm. And it's a part of the cultural fabric.
It absolutely is. And one of the things that I think is interesting, it's such a mainstay now. And what this movie reminds you or lets you in on, if you didn't know, is that it was, when it came out, the opposite of that.
Yes.
It was different, wildly, irreverently, profoundly different than anything else that had ever been on TV.
Yeah, I remember very distinctly hearing about the not ready for primetime players. And I remember as a kid, what does that mean?
Right.
I don't know what that means. Is it making fun? They're saying they're not good? And, of course, nobody knew their names at the time.
No.
They knew them pretty soon, but at this time they would have a star on, a host
Mm-hmm.
and a musical guest. Mm-hmm. But then who were these people in these skits? As a kid, I didn't understand. Why are they on TV? I don't know who they are. And they're not ready for prime time. So what's going on? But you're right. It changed television. And it was also a shift in the social fabric as well, I think.
Well, I think that the TV show itself represented a shift that was ongoing. And I think that's one of the things that this film really captures. What it captures better than anything is the chaotic energy of trying to get the first episode on screen. And I admire Jason Reitman as a director. I admire because to choreograph the camera work and this size ensemble so that it does feel honestly chaotic.
Right.
All of these people, all of these actors, they had to know what to do, when to move, the camera, the choreography down the halls and around this group of people. It is masterfully done because it had to be choreographed so precisely, and yet that's not what you feel. What you feel is just this frenetic energy.
Because it's almost real time, a real time countdown to the 90 minutes before they go on live.
Yeah.
And of course, Jason Reitman's father, Ivan Reitman, while not being a part of that not ready for primetime players, he did a lot of work with a lot of those cast members.
He did, yeah.
So this is something that, his son, Jason, is probably very familiar with. And you can understand why, like the Ghostbusters franchise, he wanted to tell this story.
Yeah, and he just tells it really well. And again, I mean, the cast is massive. So you've got all of the the ensemble from the first season of Saturday Night Live. You've got actors playing Gilda Radner, Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, Jim Belushi, Jane Curtin. Garrett Morris. He steals this movie. He's so good.
Lamorne Morris, no relation.
No.
And then you will recognize a few of these. Gabriel LaBelle, who you may have seen in The Fabelmans.
He plays, Lorne Michaels.
He plays Lorne Michaels, obviously a major figure in this story. He also may have seen him in Snack Shack, and he was just in the 4:30 movie. He is a young talent.
Yes.
And so is, a lot of these actors are, but also Rachel Sennett plays Rosie Schuster, and then you'll probably recognize Dylan O'Brien. He plays Dan Aykroyd. So there are faces that you may recognize, and it's full of talent playing these. Many of them gone on to be legends.
Oh yeah, but then also you've got the execs. So Dick Ebersol, and he is played by Philip Seymour Hoffman's son Connor
Cooper
Hoffman. He's great in this. He's really, really good in this, as he always is. But also Willem Dafoe plays an exec, and J.K. Simmons shows up as Uncle Milty. He's brilliant.
Milton Berle.
Oh, he's so great.
What a cameo. And that's a great one. If I suppose if you would ask me, who can play Milton Berle, I might not have jumped to the forefront with the J.K. Simmons, but man, I can see it. I can so see it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's great. I mean, the whole cast, and it's such a big cast. And you brought up the countdown, and I again just going back to Reitman's mastery of what he's doing, because we all know it clearly happened.
It
right?
got on the air.
Yes, but the way they set it up, that periodically they'll just the screen will go black and they'll tell you what time it is. And, you're like, oh my God, it's 38 minutes. What are you doing? And then it's 15 minutes. Oh my God, and it's everything about it just harnesses that anarchy, that creative sort of explosion, but also this incredible tension of, is it really going to happen?
Yeah,
and it's so good.
And you made a good point this morning on our TV gig that even though we don't see the actual skits as they played out, two things happen. You see the genesis of future skits.
Oh, yeah.
And there are laugh out loud moments that don't have to do with the live skits.
Yeah, it is. Well, so you get to see the dress rehearsal of a couple of the sketches that were actually on the show, and that's fun. But it's so much more fun when just out of nowhere, because of something that happens, you see, oh no, I know that one. Like that's gonna, that'll,
We'll see that later. Yeah.
They're classic, some of the all-time great Saturday Night Live classic moments, and you see how and then you do just laugh out loud, especially Garrett Morris. It's such a great moment. I guess I wasn't sure it would be funny because of the type of film that it is. But yeah, it's often very funny. And it's really, it's so human. And that's what I think LaBelle really brings to it as the one major character, the one character who's on screen almost all the time, which is Lorne Michaels. He's got such, it's just like tender vulnerability about him. It's a really solid performance.
Yeah, and I know it's also a nice tip of the hat to this entire, it's not really a franchise, to the show and what it's meant for 50 years. And I know it's become cool to say, oh, it hasn't been funny. Yes, it has. It has had its ups and downs for sure.
Oh,
but
for sure.
It has stayed consistently funny. They've continued to re-inject the cast with major talents.
Oh yeah.
And even today, I still laugh a lot when I see Saturday Night Live. So, tip of the hat to all of them. And you go back to the very, very beginning. And if people of a younger age that aren't hip to it, man, get hip to it. And you can start with right here.
Oh,
and of course, you can find a lot of those old episodes now on streaming.
Yeah, you
and
can.
A lot of they're just classics.
They
just
are.
classics.
And one of the other things that the movie really clarifies is that God, they were fueled by cocaine.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
There's so much drug use in this movie.
Yes, if you'd listened to any of the interviews with the principals or read anything from back in the day, oh yes, cocaine everywhere.
Oh,
and as we know, it took its toll.
Oh, it did. Oh yeah,
on
it did.
some of these cast members for sure. But this is a good one, and it's in theaters starting this weekend. Definitely recommendations for Saturday night. Let's stay in theaters for the story of how a young Donald Trump started his real estate business in the 1970s and 80s New York with the helping hand of infamous lawyer Roy Cohn. It's The Apprentice.
No matter what happens, you claim victory and never admit defeat. You have to be willing to do anything to anyone to win. You have a big ass. You got to work on that.
Your face looked like an orange.
Attack, attack, attack. Deny everything, admit nothing. Never admit defeat.
What if you lost your fortune today?
Well, then maybe I'll run for president. I don't know.
I say, if you're indicted, you're invited.
This is from filmmaker Ali Abbasi, who
Yeah.
has made only exceptional movies.
Yeah. And this is good, too, even though it doesn't break the sort of barriers and try new things like his previous films, like Holy Spider
Oh, yeah.
have done. It's good, and it's especially when you hear that it's about Donald Trump.
Yep.
And we have, weeks to go now before the election. So you immediately think in these polarized times that it's trying to change somebody's mind. It's going to be hero worship, or it's going to be try to be just a brutal takedown. And it's not, because the title, The Apprentice, does not refer to his TV show. It refers to him being an apprentice of Roy Cohn back in the 70s and learning all the tactics that made him what he is today. And, of course, what he is today is pretty much equally loved or loathed, depending on who you pick. So it's just showing this, and half the country will go, yeah, that's, and the other half will go, this is horrific.
Yeah.
So it's not really taking a side. It's just saying all these things that have made him who he is, this is how he learned them. And he learned them at the feet. He was the apprentice to the infamous Roy Cohn. And we won't get into his background, but look him up. Infamous is a good word. And let me tell you, even if this movie sucked, and it doesn't, it would be worth seeing for these two performances. Sebastian Stan as Donald Trump and Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn. They are both fantastic.
Yep.
And, Donald Trump is such a figure so often parodied. He's got these mannerisms like everybody does, but this is not an impersonation so much that Sebastian Stan does, but he has little things. He's got his walk down when we see him walk, and the way that Donald Trump holds his mouth when he speaks, like his lips, it's amazing. He's able to do it. It's really, I don't know how he learned it, but he does. And he doesn't go over the top to make it a cartoonish impersonation, but it's really, really good. And Jeremy Strong, he's got the physical look of Roy Cohn, and Roy Cohn was not a handsome man, let's be honest. And they take him and give him the right haircut and darken the circles under his eyes, and he looks the part, and he's just great as well. And when the two of them are on screen together, it's so compelling, especially in the early going when you see the young Donald Trump. He needs help. His dream, as he's trying to get under the shadow of his domineering father, his dream is to buy the Commodore Hotel and make it what became Trump Tower. And to do that, he needs to pull a lot of strings and grease a lot of palms, and that's where Roy Cohn comes in. And then he starts learning about how to be just utterly ruthless. And that is fascinating. Now, when the film gets into the 80s, Roy Cohn slides into the background a little bit. Then it's a little less interesting because it goes over territory we know so well, and it doesn't feel like it's blazing any trails or anything like that. When he meets Ivana Trump, played by Maria Bakalova from the Borat movie.
Right.
Yeah. And so the whole cast is great. And even though it starts to wander a little bit in the third act, especially with, this movie cannot exist in a vacuum. We know what we know.
Right.
And so little pieces of dialogue really weigh heavy in the air because of what we know. And some of it is very funny. It really is. And some of it is very ugly and sad and just heartbreaking in some aspects. And don't take that to mean that this film makes Trump a sympathetic figure right before election. It doesn't. It shows him warts and all, and really telling us, if you've paid any attention at all, it's not telling us anything we didn't know.
Right.
It's just that this is how it came to be, and it's celebrated by half the country, and it's, denigrated by half the country. And in that regard, it's a fascinating origin story character study. So definitely do recommend it. And it's not out to change anybody's mind. It's really not.
No.
Before an election. But it is a fascinating look at, two figures in popular culture and really American history And how they'll be remembered, I'll leave it up to you. But it's in theaters now, and it is The Apprentice. Well, how about a horror movie for October? Okay, Art the Clown is set to unleash chaos on the unsuspecting residents of Miles County as they peacefully drift off to sleep on Christmas Eve. This is Damien Leone back for Terrifier 3.
Why would he come back here? Even if he was alive, which he isn't. Wouldn't you want to get as far away from here as possible, as far away from you?
We both know this isn't over. I have to go back to the Terrifier.
It's still buried there, isn't it?
It might be the only thing that could stop them. Looking forward to the best Christmas ever, filled with fun, smiles, and laughter.
Well, first off, really, hats off to what this franchise has become. I mean, it has grown from its indie roots into having such a groundswell of support that many of the industry analysts are predicting this could be the #1 movie of this weekend. I mean, there's a tremendous group of fans so eager for this.
It is an amazing underdog story because Terrifier was a hugely successful indie hit. So it was big, but it's not like it made hundreds of millions of dollars at the theater. And it's actually a sequel. All Hallows Eve was the first film to include Art the Clown, but it was much less of a hit. But he really found himself in Terrifier. And then they came back with Terrifier 2, which was an unexpected hit given that it was 2.5 hours long.
Yes. And it's just so much of this. If you're not familiar, it is just constant gore. Constant practical effects and good practical effects.
Very good.
Don't get us wrong,
No.
but it is constant gore trying to up the ante. And as you have pointed out before, this character, as opposed to, say, a Michael Myers or someone, is all about being as sadistic as he can possibly be in those kills.
Yeah.
And it's just that over and over and over. And for me, and I think for you too, we're not big fans of this franchise because that, to us, just becomes tedious.
It does. It gets tiresome to both of us after a while. Although, hats off to the film franchise for what it has done.
Absolutely.
And to, fans of the franchise.
Yes.
You will really like this movie.
Right.
They've got a little bit more money. They've got more clout. They've got at least one scene full of familiar faces. And it was a fun scene, too. It's in a bar. It's a fun scene. And, Art the Clown is... he's left Halloween behind him, and he is, as George said, it's Christmas Eve, and he comes back to terrorize the town. And it picks up allegedly 5 years after the last one left off, although it certainly has not taken 5 years to make it. And he's been waiting in a chair in a window, very reminiscent of Black Christmas, for this movie, for his opportunity to go back and terrify a young woman who, as you may recall, decapitated him last time. And how did he come back from that?
That's usually something that leaves a mark. But as we've seen speaking of other famous serial killers in the films, Michael Myers came back from that.
Yep.
Yep.
Why not Art? It is kind of fun to see him dressed like Santa Claus. I mean, it is. And there are a couple of, especially there's a scene in a mall as the mall Santa that was pretty surprising. Like, I was quite surprised with where they went with it. And then, famously, recently, in screenings, people didn't make it through the opening sequence. I don't know how that is possible. But there is about midway through, a little further on, there's a shower scene that then you're like, no, that's the Art the Clown I remember. But, the practical effects are great.
Oh, yeah.
They're incredibly impressive.
Yeah, and we're both fans of practical effects always. So
and his his sadistic nature, the fact that whereas Michael Myers is usually pretty efficient, he's not. He plays with his work.
Right.
You know, he keeps them alive for a long time, and he does horrible things to them. And I think that's one of the reasons that's one of the things that really does separate this film from other franchises. And also, David Howard Thornton cuts a very creepy figure as Art the Clown. He does a great job with that sort of maniacal comedy. He's
the little top hat.
Yeah. And his reactions when he's, listening in and he's very convincing. He's very scary.
But this is one of those, it's very simple.
There's no plot.
No. You know what's coming. If you like it, you're going to be satisfied. It's going to give you, it won't give you 2.5 hours of it this time.
Which is good, I think.
Yeah,
2.5 hours is kind of dumb.
But if it's not your bag, and we're going to be honest, it's really not ours, then you'll want to avoid it. But there's a lot of people that are looking forward to it. And again, we say, God bless you for taking this from the indie roots, as indie filmmakers ourselves, how hard that can be and what they've turned it into. So, congratulations. Congrats to you. And Terrifier 3 is out now. Well, let's lighten the mood on Netflix. At a retreat in Morocco, a woman meets a young man whose acquaintanceship evolves into an intoxicating, life-altering love affair. It's called Lonely Planet.
How come you can't finish your book at home?
Long story.
I've got time.
I think the point of travel was to show us the tiny place we occupy in the world.
How does your guy deal with all this?
Who said I had a guy?
Wikipedia.
Oh, right, of course. You followed me yesterday.
I just wanted to make sure you were safe.
Am I?
When you're stuck in life, you need to do something irrevocable.
Careful there.
This is the latest, and I don't know what you would call this cottage little industry now, where it's a romance fantasy for a woman of a certain age, a mature age, where their life gets turned around in an exotic locale with romance with a much younger hottie. And, all's fair because we've seen the reverse for many, many years.
Yeah, we almost never don't see the reverse. The reverse is so commonplace that it's not even a plot line.
Yeah.
It would just be a given.
So a lot of these have cropped up lately, and like most films, you're going to see some, like the one with, I can't remember the name of it now, the one recently with Anne Hathaway, a little better than most.
Mm-hmm.
This one, unfortunately, not a little better than most. And this is the writer and director, Susanna Grant. Now, she's been a writer for years.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was Oscar nominated for the screenplay for Erin Brockovich, I believe.
Right.
So she's done a lot of screenplays for both movies and TV. I think maybe directed one other film. So she's the director on this as well. And Laura Dern, always a treat.
Yes.
Plays Catherine. She is one of the authors invited to this writer's retreat in Morocco, which looks very cool. She's not really digging that she's there. In fact, you kind of wonder, why did you come? Because she's sort of an introvert. She just wants to finish her book. And so she's not really in for the group activities and meeting all these other authors. She wants to retire to her room and try to finish this book. And one of the other authors that has been invited, named Lily, she's played by Diana Silvers, she's a lot younger. You might remember from Booksmart as a supporting character. She brings along her boyfriend, Owen, played by Liam Hemsworth. And he is not the literary type. In fact, she embarrasses him at a get-together one night by saying that he only reads Sports Illustrated. And so it sets the young girl, the young author there, up as sort of a villain right away. Doesn't pay enough attention to her boyfriend and all this. So that sort of makes him an outsider, and he goes off by himself, and fate brings him together in a cab and in other situations with Catherine, Laura Dern's character. And so they find they have a lot more in common. And then Owen is pushed farther and farther away from his girlfriend, and we know what happens after that. So it's very cookie cutter. It's very check off the boxes. Laura Dern, though, can class up any joint.
Yes, she can.
And she's great. And Liam Hemsworth is better than most of the things that he's been in. And there's a certain amount of chemistry there. Don't expect a lot of physicality in this movie between the two. It's all about getting them together in a slow sort of way. So not a bunch of sex scenes in this thing, but it's a slow building fantasy with a lot of pretty pictures and a mature woman, changing her life, making some life choices in her career, and then finding a romance with this younger man. So again, sort of like Terrifier. If that's your thing, it delivers it. It's certainly just the average of this type of plot, very predictable. You know where it's going, but if you're comfortable in that, it's on Netflix, you're going to like it. Otherwise, it doesn't rise to the level like the Anne Hathaway one, The Idea of You, which came out not that long ago.
This year, I think.
Yeah, so they'll keep coming out, and that's fine. And some are going to be better than others, and this one is really not. And it's on Netflix now. Pretty standard, pretty generic, and it is called Lonely Planet. Let's go to Shudder. For a horror story. A boy and his stepmother fear for their safety after an eerie creature resembling the boy's recently deceased father visits them. Ooh, it's called Daddy's Head.
What are you looking at? Isaac. Dad. He's in the forest, hiding in trees. His body's different.
I know that there's something wrong.
Everyone must know he's here.
Which I think we're in agreement. That's not a great title for this
No,
movie.
don't love the title. To me, right away, it conjured up something that this movie is not. I was immediately thinking it was some sort of schlocky grindhouse thing.
Sure, yeah.
It's not at all. This leans a little folk horror. It certainly will remind you of A Goodnight Mommy.
Right.
Babadook. Some things like that. But I think it satisfies, as I said in my written review, fans of both blood and metaphors.
Right.
I think it works on both levels. And yeah, I enjoyed it. It's one of those, it's a small cast. One of the things that reminds me of Goodnight Mommy. And it's out in the countryside, a lot of big windows like Goodnight Mommy, if you remember. And it's a child-centered mystery.
Right.
They're in the English countryside. And this young boy, Isaac, played by Rupert Turnbull, good young performance. He's already been dealt a cruel blow because his mother is already dead at this young age, and his father has remarried. Played by Charles Aitken, and then his stepmother Laura, played by Julia Brown. So they live there, and then the father is killed in a car accident. So that leaves the boy with no living relatives, and social services would prefer that he stay with the stepmother as legal guardian. She's not quite sure about that. She's getting advice from her own mother saying, no, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And as she's trying to sort through the legalities, things start to go bump in the night as young Isaac, starts to report that Dad is not dead. He's out there. He's paying me visits in the vent of the house, or more specifically, in the woods, right out in front of the house.
No.
Dad was an architect, and you've seen that there is quite an impressive structure in the woods, and Dad's in there. And so that third act, I think because of what it develops in the first two acts, it's writer-director Benjamin Barfoot, the character dynamics work really well, and then the payoff comes in the third act, when he really amps up the action, the blood, and there is some. Oh, and by the way, trigger warning, there is violence to animals.
Yeah.
I want to let you know about that. But things are ramped up, and then the creature feature effects come in, and they're pretty good.
Yeah.
We talked about practical effects. Yeah. They're pretty satisfying. It's cool. And I guess that's when the title comes in, because Daddy's head is kind of creepy now when he's out there in the woods. So, yeah, I liked this one. I think it's well done, especially for fans of, the movies that we mentioned, folk horror, things like that. Metaphors about grief, a lot of metaphors about grief. It's not as tidy about it as the Babadook. I think you may be apt to wonder a little bit more with the finale of it, but it's a good one. Mixes the blood, the action, and the metaphors. And it is on Shudder starting this weekend. Yeah, liked it. Recommend it. Called Daddy's Head. And let's stay with VOD on Prime. This is some sci-fi horror. Okay. On the first night of harvest, three brothers set out for the desert to see a witch's corpse. called Falling Stars.
La fabbrica jubileriana, menta iruda, salventota creatura.
Adam, you want to see a real witch tonight?
Hey, don't get your hopes up.
Rob buried a witch. We drove out to the desert with him to see it. We weren't there for very long. Less than 5 minutes, right?
And then what? And then what?
Nothing. He put it back.
And then what?
I was really impressed by this movie for a number of reasons. One is that it looks amazing.
Made me think it was the kids from, you want to see a dead body?
Yeah, Stand By Me.
Stand By Me.
Exactly.
They're grown up and they want to see a witch.
Oh, yeah, it's got that vibe for sure. And but the other thing I love about it, it's got this very lived-in mythology, like superstition, They're all in San Bernardino County in this very dusty small town, no town really to speak of. And one of the things I think is great about it is that it doesn't condescend to that. They're not a bunch of rubes.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just feels very lived in, and they don't tell you right away, but they know that the falling stars are not stars at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're going to go see this witch body, because a friend of theirs shot a falling star, knowing full well what he was doing. And so they go out there, before nightfall, because they're not dumb. But one thing leads to another, and they're a little late coming home, and the stars have started to fall. And it's so well put together. It's like one scene after the next. You're like, oh my God, and then you're invested. You're like, what are you doing out there? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
It's clearly made on not too much of a budget, but it looks spectacular. It just holds together really well with a bunch of great performances.
The writer and co-director is Richard Karpala, and co-directing with Gabriel Bienziski. Probably mispronounced that. But yeah, it reminds me in some respects a lot with Daddy's Head. It's one of those that is maybe limited, not a great, huge budget, maybe a smaller cast, but everything is well put together, well constructed, well acted, and a couple of good ones. And this is out on Prime.
It is.
Yeah. Sci-fi horror. I don't think we've had one of those for a little while, but that's always fun.
Yeah.
So a couple of goodies for spooky season to check out, and along with Terrifier this week if you're into that. And that's called Falling Stars on Prime.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
That little jingle means it's lobby time. Checking in with Daniel Baldwin, a.k.a. the Schlocketeer, for the studio happenings this week. What's shaking?
Well, first off, Lionsgate's horror movie Bagman will hit VOD on October 18th. And then Quentin Dupieux's new film Dolly will hit VOD on October 22nd.
Yeah, I always like his stuff. It's weird, but good. In a good way.
It always keeps you on your toes.
It does.
The Void and Psycho Gorman filmmaker Steven Kostanski's latest, Frankie Frico, will arrive on VOD on October 25th.
That's a weird one. Shocker.
And then Neon will give a limited theatrical release on December 6th to The End, which is an apocalyptic musical from the Act of Killing director Joshua Oppenheimer that stars Tilda Swinton, Michael Shannon, Moses Ingram, and George McKay.
Oh, man. I'm in for so many reasons.
Right? And to keep that going, Vertical Entertainment will give a limited theatrical release to Snowtown Murders filmmaker Justin Kurzel's latest film, The Order, also on December 6th. And this one's a crime thriller starring Jude Law, Nicholas Hoult, Journey Smollett, and Ty Sheridan.
Great.
All right, yeah.
And then continuing with the December 6th of it all, there's a Nick Frost starring horror film called Getaway that's getting a limited theatrical release on that date, courtesy of IFC, before hitting Shudder sometime early next year. And then Kino Lorber has also set a December 6th release for Paul Schrader's O Canada, which stars Richard Gere, Uma Thurman, Michael Imperioli, and Jacob Elordi. Netflix has set a December 11th premiere for its critically acclaimed Angelina Jolie drama, Maria.
Oh, that's Maria Callas.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And Netflix has also set a December 13th premiere for Jaume Collet-Serra's new thriller Carry On, which stars Taron Egerton, Jason Bateman, Sophia Carson, Daniel Deadweiler, Theo Rossi, and Dean Norris.
Cool.
And then Roadside Attractions will give Gia Coppola's The Last Showgirl and New York and L.A. theatrical release on December 13th, followed by a wide theatrical release on January 10th. And that one stars Pamela Anderson, Jamie Lee Curtis, Kiernan Shipka, and Dave Bautista.
Yeah, Pamela Anderson's getting lots of great buzz for this.
Yeah, big time. And then to close things out, Universal has locked in a July 17th, 2026 release for Christopher Nolan's next film. There are no further details about that movie whatsoever at this time, other than the fact that Matt Damon is already attached to it.
2026 already.
Yep.
All right. Well, you can always catch up with Daniel on the socials at the Schlocketeer. Thanks as always.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Looking ahead to next week, a big sequel for horror movie season. Smile 2 comes out.
Also, Rumors.
Oh, yeah. We haven't talked about that yet,
We
have
have
we?
not.
We actually saw it a few weeks ago because it had a very limited release. But Rumors is coming out next week. Also, Anna Kendrick directing.
Yes.
For Woman of the Hour.
And Brothers.
One called Mads.
Ghost Game.
Rippy.
And Union.
All right, that's all next week. What about this week? Boy, pretty good week.
Yeah.
Really, everything really recommended except for the romance on Netflix. And really, that's good if you like those. I mean, it'll satisfy.
It's the same with Terrifier 3.
Oh, that's right.
It's a recommendation if you know that you will.
Exactly.
You like that series.
Yeah. If
you're
you
not
know,
a fan of the series, good God, don't go see it.
If you know, you know. But some good stuff this week. What do you think? Let us know. Easy to find us on the socials at Mad Wolf Columbus. Also, madwolf.com. MADDWOLF is our main website. Plenty of ways to keep in touch. One more time, we want to let you know that if you're in the area of Columbus, Ohio, our home base next weekend is Nightmares Film Festival. I'm telling you what, I know you might get sick of hearing us talk about it, but we love it so much. It is a fantastic place for horror fans, horror filmmakers, a horror community.
Oh, yeah. It's the most fun. It is a great theater also to go to a film festival. Yeah, it starts on Thursday, ends on Sunday. Come the whole time.
Yeah, the Gateway Film Center in Columbus, Ohio. We would love to see you. And if you do show up, come up and say hi.
For sure.
Because we love it. Just one big happy horror family there at Nightmares Film Festival. Otherwise, keep in touch. Have a great week. We'll talk again soon. She is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Screening Room Podcast.
See ya.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.
Live from Burbank in New York, it's Saturday night.